Our next topic relates to diversity in the workplace. Research shows that women of color who start businesses get less than 1% of all the venture capital given out. So one such fund, the Fearless Fund, has offered $20,000 grants to black women entrepreneurs. A conservative group has sued, saying such grants violate the Civil Rights Act because they discriminate against women of other races. And this week, a federal appeals court in the Southeast stopped those grants while the legal case proceeds. Luke, what's your take on this?
I think this is certainly a worthwhile cause that this nonprofit is working towards. Unfortunately, I think they've been tripped up by the letter of the law with the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which you mentioned, which bans racial discrimination when it comes to contracts. This was originally intended to help protect former slaves from being discriminated against. Here we are in a different time, and now we have a different legal interpretation of how that applies. I think moving forward, what they have argued is that they're not actually issuing contracts, they're providing donations. At the same time, on their website, it explicitly says that they're giving contracts. So I think they're going to probably need to shift in how they approach what they're doing, pursue the same goals, but move away from that language, perhaps move towards a focus on lived experience where applicants can talk about their background and use that as a way to still help the people they want to help and comply with the law.
I just think it's awful and ironic that a law that was created to help the formerly enslaved is being used as a cudgel against their descendants. Mm-hmm. And it is saying that colorblindness is going to cancel 400 years of history. Mm-hmm. And I just, it just is it's cruel to be doing that. And if black families have 1/10 the wealth of white families. And if you've ever been to the Black Belt in the South, Alabama, Mississippi, you see the incredible poverty there. And that's done by policies created in the 20th century, whether it's the color redlining or segregation. And so the idea that we're going to use laws that meant to help the formerly enslaved to hurt their descendants just seems cruel.
It's, I think it's a valid program to try to remedy the racial imbalances that took place before, and they're still here. We don't have a level playing field. It may be more level, and I think it's somewhat disingenuous that groups like the Alliance for Equal Rights, what a great name, had been silent when the advantages were to whites. And now that, again, we're trying to remedy some of these past imbalances, now they're coming up playing the victim here.
And I would just add that these right-wing legal organizations have a number of these lawsuits, not all of which have been successful. They've sued Amazon, Pfizer, some other companies for some of their programs, the DEI type programs. And they don't always win, but the point is it can have a chilling effect, right? Companies are risk averse. They don't want huge lawsuits that they have to defend. They don't want the publicity that this brings. And so a lot of them are quietly changing their DEI programs so that they are not sort of helping out minority groups and making it available to all. And so this is really important, right, that this kind of has this larger chilling effect, because when you look at this particular case, the stakes seem kind of low. I mean, this company only gives out 4 of these. They're $20,000 each, so that's $80,000 in grants to black women. It's pretty small potatoes, so you kind of wonder, why are they doing this? And it's really because they're in a much larger fight to claim that whites are the victims and to try to get rid of any kind of race-conscious policies.
And I think they've been fairly successful legally. I mean, this group has been involved in 24 or so lawsuits, and 1/3 of those have got to the Supreme Court. They struck down part of the Voting Rights Act. They struck down affirmative action policies in colleges, as we talked about in the show, and now this. So if you look at a group and their impact over the last 30 years, it's been pretty significant, in addition to what you said, the reverberations of that as well.
And we also know that the courts for the most of American history have been very conservative. There's that short period of the Warren Court where it was more liberal and more race conscious. But other than that, throughout American history, they've used the courts to limit the freedom and to limit equal rights rather than to increase them.
Rick, I'm wondering if this, Sarah talks kind of about this trend, I'm wondering if this would have an impact on university students who might be applying for some kind of diversity fellowships, or Sarah's mentioned DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion.
I think there certainly can be. As Luke said, they've won a number of cases. As Sarah said, Even in the cases that they lost, the companies have changed their policies. There really has been a chilling effect of this, and I think it's going to continue forward.
So Luke, if this gets to the Supreme Court, they've had some different decisions related to race. Do you have a sense of what the court might decide on this issue?
Well, given the nature of the court, I mean, this is the most conservative court we've had in recent memory. So, again, I'm not a Supreme Court expert, but based on that precedent, I would suspect that it would look open-minded, if not favorably, towards the argument here.
Ty, do you see other ways that companies could be helping support women entrepreneurs of color?
Well, I do think it's interesting of where the courts have allowed race-based, allowed us to look at that, and the one has been the military academies. So they have a carve-out for affirmative action for the military because they say, listen, we need to ensure that our officer corps looks like the enlisted corps, and we can't just have an officer corps that's 1 or 2% African American. So we say it's important for our military, and it is, but then that same argument could be used in other areas as well, and they say no, it can't. So it's just an interesting how the court is parsing this, and there are cases for that right now. So I don't know how companies are going to do this. They're so risk averse, as you said, how they're going to do that. I know we're certainly in higher ed trying to figure out how that's going to work.
And lots of people are going to be trying to figure out how it works.